Paula Poundstone is set to perform her comedy stylings at Lancaster Performing Arts Center on April 17th, and she joins us today on Bob FM. How are you doing today, first of all?
Oh, good, thanks. How about you?
Good, I'm doing super. Got to ask you, is it true that the late Robin Williams helped you get your start?
It is true. Well, not my start exactly. We met in a comedy club 1,000 years ago, and Robin helped lots and lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
He helped people he didn't even know because he made going out to see comedy exciting again. That's why.
Yes.
And
I was just wondering what he did to help your career along.
Well, he introduced me to his management at the time. He took me down to L.A. with him. We were up in San Francisco, and so I got these fancy managers when I was very young. And he brought me on Saturday Night Live with him. I did a stand-up comedy set on Saturday Night Live when Robin was the host.
Right.
And opened a lot of doors to me that way. And he's a very, 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 very good guy.
Yeah. Definitely miss him.
Yeah. No, it was. I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head, anyways, that has been such a loss to everybody around the world, honestly, collectively. I think it made the whole world sad. Partly, obviously, because of the how, I just think it was a big, big loss.
I do, too. I so do.
But one could also look at, how great it was that we had that for a while. For a while,
yeah, absolutely. He certainly brightened a lot. I'm so sad that he couldn't find his own joy.
Yeah, well, actually, he had a real, there was this idea sort of floating that he was just a depressed guy. And although I don't know well enough that he was or he wasn't, but he actually had a disease that caused deterioration, and that's how he, it wasn't just, somebody who, it wasn't just like a gloomy guy.
No.
He actually had a disease that caused that kind of deterioration.
Yeah.
And a rare disease, apparently. It was not, I forget what it's called, Louis something.
Yeah.
That part was, very surprising.
He was just that kind of a person, though, to take you under his wing and just, help you along.
Yeah, no, he was always, interested in my family and how things were going each time that we were together.
He seemed that kind of a person to me.
Yeah, I think he really was. Yeah.
All right, let me ask you, this is probably the stupidest question you're going to get in the lifetime. You are forever a piece of pop culture as at least Muppet history. The She Drives Me Crazy video. I loved the vest in that. Do you still have that thing?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Are you serious?
Was it the one made of the
It was all in the blocks and it had the heart on it.
Yes.
I love that.
That's so funny that you remember that video. That's I met Elmo that day. It was great.
Well, I remember it because it had Dick Clark and Casey Kasem, and
Yeah, right. It did. Yeah.
And Ozzy and Vanna and Phil you, and that's all I remember.
It had tons of people. I remember the place where we shot. It was like this. It was like this sort of who's who going in and out.
Yeah.
I was not. I certainly didn't fall into the who's who category. I was the what's what category at the time. But that's funny that you remember that. That was fun.
Okay, you've had some interesting jobs. True or false? Bus tables at IHOP.
No. Okay, it's partly true. I was a waitress at IHOP.
Okay.
I do, which in the world of waiting tables and busing tables, that's a
big difference.
That's an important distinction. Yes, I was a waitress at the IHOP in Orlando, Florida, 11 at night to 7 in the morning. I only hacked it for a few months, but it seared itself into my being.
How old were you at the time?
I was 18.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. Everyone should have such an experience somewhere. But it was and the funny thing is now when I work in Florida or something, or I work to people who know about Florida, like I was actually back in Orlando, I think in February. It was on a street called the Orange Blossom Trail. And when I tell people that I worked there, and that I told them I used to walk to work all the time because I didn't have a car, I didn't even have a bike, it was the street where all these hookers were. But I didn't know that. I was very naive. And I had no idea why these women were walking around in dresses. And I certainly had no idea why so many people offered me rides. I was not in a dress. I would walk to work for safety. I wouldn't wear my uncomfortably short IHOP dress.
Right.
I would wear my corduroy forest green pants and my sneakers, and a t-shirt and sweatshirt. And I have my uniform in my yellow backpack, and with my uniform shoes hanging off the back of my pack tied together. And still, there must have been some desperation in those days, because still guys would pull over and ask me if I want to ride. And when you're driving down the street and there's all sort of scantily clad women in dresses, right, with big, this is late 70s, so, big wedge heels, with big hair and stuff. And they had no interest in that, but they
interesting, yeah.
Yeah, but
the corduroys.
Wait a minute, that girl with the yellow backpack and the green corduroys, she's the one for me.
I love it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, okay. I guess they weren't your average Johns, I guess.
That's funny. True or false? Bicycle messenger.
Yes, I was.
How did you get that job?
I was just applied for it. I was a bicycle messenger in San Francisco. This is pre-internet, and the downtown of San Francisco, like most downtowns, I'm going to assume, would not have functioned. The business world would come to a screeching halt without the work of bicycle messengers. I worked for a company that did mostly they copied things. They mostly copied blueprints. So you'd have these huge tube containers, very heavy, that you would strap to the basket on a really cheap bike, because the company I worked for never bought like a bike out of a store.
Right.
They bought them from Goodwill and stuff. So you always have these banged up, lousy bikes, no gears or anything like that, which doesn't matter, because to this day I don't really know what to do with a gear. But so much so that the front of the bike was so damn heavy with these things. And then I'm not actually a very good bike rider, by the way. I don't have the strength to go up a hill, and I'm afraid to go down a hill. So there I was in San Francisco, and what I mostly did was get off and walk the bike.
Oh, yeah, with all of the hills there, that would,
It was a very challenging job. I was hit. I was hit by a pickup truck once, but that was entirely my fault. I made a left out of a right-hand lane. And another time I was squished between two large, tractor truck kind of trucks. Just at a light, they were sort of parrying a little bit for position. And neither one saw me, and I was just squished between them.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it was a very dangerous job.
Yeah.
I didn't last long at that one either, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's good for us because of where you are now.
Yeah, this job I've lasted quite a while.
Yeah.
I haven't been squished between trucks, and I don't know when.
And you know what? For a while, we thought you were going to open a cat rescue center.
Well, in essence, I have. Honestly, sometimes I think about my cats. I'm so busy all the time that I don't really pet them as much as they deserve to be pet. And I think to myself, they might have gotten more attention if they'd stayed in the pound. I mean, I think they're fairly comfortable here, and Lord knows I do nothing but clean up after them.
How many cats did you have at one point?
The most I ever had was 16.
Okay, I remember 14 at one point.
Yeah, no, I had 16, and then my cat Ruffy, who lived, a long cat life, finally expired, maybe in the fall. So now I have 15.
Aww.
And honestly, I'm like a really unprofitable farmer. That's what I am. I get up in the morning and I clean and I clean and I clean and I clean, and there's no harvest. There's no pelt. There's no milk. It's not like you can make cat cheese. Nothing.
Now, I don't know if the listeners know this or not, but Paula Poundstone was the first woman to win a Cable Ace Award. Isn't that true?
I guess I was, maybe. Something like that.
Yeah, best stand-up comedy show, 1990.
I did. I had a show on HBO. Very, very briefly. I had like a little talk show. It was a way ahead of its time a cool little show. Occasionally, HBO even shows it again. And, I look like I was about 10 years old. It was quite a while ago. And they only made a handful of them. Originally, the plan was to, make a whole series. And instead, they only made a handful of them at the time. And by golly, it won, back when there were Cable Ace Awards, it won an award. It's funny because, cable used to be, it was so disrespected that they had to make their own award show, right? They didn't count as regular television. And now, regular television shows are on the sidelines, and most of at the Emmys so often it's cable shows are taking home the booty all the time.
Speaking of Emmys, you've won one of those too, haven't you?
All right, let me just qualify. A local Emmy, which most people don't even know that such a thing exists. And by the way, neither did I until I had the experience. I made a show for PBS, and it happened to have come out pretty good. So yeah.
Yeah, that was life.
I haven't had to go out and buy any kind of trophy cabinet or anything like that. But yeah.
Well, that's because you're underrated, honey.
That's what it is. Sure.
We're chatting with Paula Poundstone today on Bob FM, and we all have our skeletons in the closet. What I want to know is how you were able to keep your comedic center through the demons.
Well, that's the key to getting through anything. Honestly, it's a great thing that nature has given us, and I don't know. So often I listen to a lot of books on tape about the brain and about our evolution, and I know that we as a species have big brains because we ran slow, because we were snack time for bigger animals, and then we figured out to work as a group, and we figured out things with our brains, and therefore we developed our brains. I never hear any explanation of how we developed sense of humor or why it was given to us, but it is, they're finding out more and more that it's incredibly healing.
Yes.
And so I am lucky enough that I happen to do a job that kind of puts you in that headspace a lot.
Yeah.
So, and it's, I do feel like the luckiest performer in the entire world for lots and lots of reasons, but it's just such a great job. I go out and it lifts not only the burdens of audience members, hopefully, but certainly lifts my own. No, they really did.
Oh, you're kidding me.
They really did.
Oh.
And all right, my manager, perhaps she was desperate at the time. My manager is a great woman. We've worked together for 20-something years now. And she's the kind of person, and this is part of the reason why we work together for 20-something years now and why she's such a great manager. She's the kind of person that always wants to figure out how to turn something not very good into something good. So I think she felt like, well, because she had told me that they called, and when she told me, I was like, well, that's ridiculous. And she said, well, why don't you just talk to the producer? Just talk to the producer, like thinking that somehow something perhaps more palatable would develop from that conversation. So I talked to the producer, and she tells me about, she said, well, Oprah's doing a segment on women who drink alone, or it was something of that, something sounding like that, And I said, well, yeah, okay. I said, yeah, well, the truth is, yes, I've had a drinking problem, but I like to think of myself as a stand-up comic. And she said, I swear this I'm not making up. She said, Oprah might touch on that.
Might touch on what? Being a comedian or the alcohol?
I know that if I were to go on, on their women who drink alone segment, or that I might have the honor of having Oprah touch on the fact that by the way,
great,
happen to be a stand-up comic.
Yeah.
I know you're going to be shocked by this as a career move, but I turned it down.
Did you ever end up on Oprah after all of the years?
No.
And
yet, you know what? Many years ago, when I was first starting out as a stand-up comic, I started in Boston doing open mic nights 1,000 years ago.
Wow.
And I bust tables for a living, so it's not like I was turning my back on a big law career. I started when I was 19, and the scene in Boston was it was really crazy. It was very male dominated.
Mm-hmm.
It was very blue. It was very sexist. Beyond sexist, it was full of misogyny, and it was not an easy. And that's what attracted the crowds, and the crowds liked that style. That's what they were coming out to see. So if I happened to be on a bill, and in Boston, the way they did the nights for the most part was like a lot of comedy shows. They would have like a MC and a middle act and a headliner.
Right.
And the MC is the bottom of the totem pole. But in Boston, the way they did it, first of all, because we all were just starting out, and so no one had very many minutes of material.
Right.
So what they would do is the guy who was the star of the night was, in fact, the MC. He had to have the most material because he had to do material in between the acts.
Right.
And we all had so little material that the shows were like maybe 4 or 5 comics and then an MC. So everybody come on, do maybe 10 minutes or something like that. I can't remember anymore. So the guy that was sort of the big headliner was really just very crass, and if you didn't, it was hard to make headway in that place for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this idea that I would go see what clubs were like in different cities, and I did that. I looked around, and then I decided, well, I'm going to pick a city, and I'm going to go establish like a stand-up comedy there. And I guess, as I recall, I chose Austin, Texas. There's some things about Austin that I liked.
Right.
So I went there, but I really didn't. I'm not a. I really don't have the kind of personality or the nerve. Like what the guys used to do in the old days was they'd go into a club that was a disco or something like that, and they'd say, "Hey, can we put a comedy night in here one night a week, and we'll bring in the." We'll take the door, you guys take the drinks, and right? So
right.
I wanted to go do that somewhere, but I really didn't. I really wasn't a strong enough human being probably to be able to do that, but that was my plan. So I would go to Austin, Texas. I'm staying in a cheap hotel. I had, the money I'd saved from bussing tables. And I wake up one morning, and I sort of stayed in bed as long as I could because I was sort of afraid of going out to do this thing that I had planned on doing. And I couldn't stay in the hotel for very long because I didn't have any money.
Right.
And I wake up one morning, and I turn on the television in the hotel room, and Oprah's on. And she had women comics on that day.
She couldn't ask you for that one.
She didn't ask me for that one. And I watched it. I remember there was a woman, Sally something from Chicago. There was a woman whose name I'm not going to be able to remember now. She was in, oh my gosh. She was on Night Court. She played the bailiff, I think.
Yeah, okay, I know who you're talking about. Marky Post.
No. It was a black woman.
Okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I've worked with her. I can't think of her name right now.
And
but anyway, she was one of the ones, right? So they all do a little bit of stand-up there on the Oprah show that day, and Oprah was talking about women comics. And this was when the stand-up comedy scene was just, Marsha Warfield, this was when the stand-up comedy scene was just beginning to, take off. And I watched that show, and I thought to myself, why am I here in Austin, Texas, trying to do something that will require me to be an entrepreneur when that is not my strength? And what I really want to do is just focus on my own stand-up comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the women, and by the way, none of them were very good. They were all okay,
yeah,
but none of them were very good. And I left and went back to Boston. And so, in an odd way, Oprah was sort of a turning point for me.
Yeah.
I may have even drank. I can't remember anymore. I may have ordered a drink from room service. No, I didn't get room service back in those days. But I remember watching them, and I remember thinking to myself, wait a minute, if this is what's out there, right, I can do that.
I can do at least this.
Exactly. exactly. And in fairness to the people who were the performers that day, including Marsha Warfield, who was a very funny stand-up.
Oh, yeah.
When you do one of those, it's a daytime show with this, a very stark lighting, and you're standing, on a sound stage telling your little jokes. It's actually a horrible setting for doing stand-up. If they asked me now to go do stand-up on Oprah, I would say two things. I would say, first of all, she doesn't have a show anymore. And then I would say, no, it just doesn't sound like a very good setting.
No.
But yeah, so I was kind of oddly inspired by how bad some of the comics were.
And you're quite an accomplished writer.
Well, I'm a writer. I don't know if I can.
Oh, I'd say you're accomplished, hon.
I've had some nice, years ago I was hired by Mother Jones magazine.
I know. I remember seeing an article with your name on it, and I went, Paula, is that?
Yeah.
And it was.
A great experience. The guy who was, Jeffrey Klein, was the editor-in-chief back then. And just, unfortunately, I was smart enough at the time to realize, because it's not like it paid a lot of money, and it took a lot of time, but I was smart enough at the time to recognize that one conversation with this guy who was a genius was like a college credit, and so it was very helpful. Sometimes people tell me now, sometimes they say, well, why don't you put out a book that's a collection of your writing for Mother Jones? I go, because the magazine came out every other month, and the book would be a pamphlet. That's why.
Yeah.
And I did it for 5 years, but that still doesn't generate a tremendous amount of material. But it did. Talking to Jeffrey taught me a lot about writing.
I know you've done
and
stuff.
By the way, even the first book I wrote, I wrote by hand. I never. Now I use a computer for writing, but I'm not sure that's really moving the world forward. I used to write everything by hand. I would, even at Mother Jones, I'd send it to them handwritten. And then later when I got an assistant and I wrote a book, I would have her type the stuff.
Yeah, there's nothing in this book I meant to say.
Yeah. And I wrote 3 workbooks with my high school math teacher, all of them by hand. Dickens didn't even have a retractable pen, so it is possible.
How therapeutic was it to write that book?
Yeah, it was a good helpful thing. One time on Wait, Don't Tell Me, there was a question, as I recall, about journaling, which I had always thought was like a healthy pursuit, and I had done a lot of that throughout my life. I always did. I always had a notebook, was always writing, and even my children, when they were very little, I used to make them do sort of some form of journaling because I thought it was this helpful thing. And I remember on Wait one day, Peter said that they had found, or that somebody suggested, or some study showed, I can't remember, that people who journaled tended to be more depressed.
Oh my gosh.
And that they thought that the reason was, the conclusion that was drawn, was that they were sort of going over and over these bad things that happened. And I went, oh my gosh, that's me all over again. And so I... so one of the fun things about my book, though, is I don't put anything in if there's not like a funny part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the truth is, I started writing that book long before I stumbled into so much problems.
Right.
I wrote that book. Took me 9 years to write. I'm writing one now that's taken 7.
I was going to ask you. It's due in 2016.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I finally finished the first draft. When I made the deal to write this one, I said to myself, well, wait a minute. I couldn't possibly take as long as I took on the last one, because now I've got to be good at this, right? And I shocked myself how long this one took. But the thing is, I'm not a writer for a living. I'm a stand-up comic for a living, and I'm.
The books are bonuses for us.
Well, so what happens is I never have time. I don't have scheduled writing time. So, and I'm a single working mom with 3 kids,
How old are the kids now?
Well, now they're old.
Yeah.
But during the process they weren't. So I have a 24-year-old, I have a 21-year-old, and I have a 16-year-old.
Wow.
And so I always had to slip writing into the cracks of my life. And the truth is, there's not a lot of cracks And,
Yeah.
and if it seems like there is, then a cat throws up on the rug in front of me. So there aren't.
I so understand that one.
Yeah. Anytime I look like I might be moving towards a few seconds to sit in a chair and think, a cat throws up on the chair. They sense it. That's the thing.
Yeah, I know that. Hey, are you still doing the NPR panels?
Oh, yeah. I do Wait, Don't Tell Me on NPR.
That's still on.
Oh, it is still on.
Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't realize
very
that.
Well, actually, it keeps growing. It's a mystery to all. Honestly, it's a mystery to the people who make the show. Nobody knows why it keeps growing, but it does.
When the book comes out, will you come back and talk with me about it?
I hope you'll let me.
I will let you. Please come back and talk with me. I don't know how much time you have, but can I get a current website for the fans to go to get the latest on you?
I love that idea. PaulaPoundstone.com. Not too tricky at all.
Thank you so much for this interview today. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I do appreciate you spending some time with us.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
care.
Paula. You have a great day.
All right.